Hello ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's Geeky here again today to bring you the first video of Geeky Gaming Grub. And today we are actually just going to focus on knife skills because I find very few people actually know their knife skills, and a lot of chefs I know really well have been injured because they have bad knife skills. And believe me, this is even professional chefs. Like, if you look at my hands closely, you'll see that they are covered in scars. Now, I got most of these scars fighting with these, so that's besides the point. But a lot of other chefs that I know have gotten scars just cutting food. So, you need to know how to cut, and the first thing you're going to need to know, or to have, if you're cutting anything, is a slightly damp paper tea towel. Now, I know this seems ridiculous, but believe me, a lot of cutting boards are warped, and you do not want to be cutting on a warped cutting board without a damp tea towel. Now, here I have a wooden cutting board. Plastic cutting boards have their uses too. I prefer to use them for meats because they are slightly more sanitary. Wooden cutting boards actually have a better rebound off of them, so you can actually cut a lot faster. So that's what I'm going to be using for this first video, in which we'll cut celery, carrot, I guess, and an onion. Now the next thing you're going to need is a sharp knife. Now, some people will say that sharp knives are dangerous. It's very much the opposite. Blunt knives are the most dangerous thing you can come across in a kitchen. And that is because if you have a blunt knife and you're cutting, you're going to just be cutting, and you can slip. And the slip will generally take it right into your knuckles. And I'm not sure if you've ever sliced all your knuckles at the same time, but it's not fun, and a lot of days at the kitchen have ended because of that. So you need a very sharp knife. This knife, I actually forget its Japanese name, but it is a regular chef knife that is a bit more suited to cutting vegetables than cutting meats. And it is one of my favorite knives to have in the kitchen just because you go through some more vegetable cutting than you'll ever go through meat cutting. Anyways, probably time to get started, but the first thing I actually want to show you is proper hand position. Now, I'm actually going to show you this with the celery, and the reason I have the celery here is actually because it's one of the easiest things in the world to cut. And I'm already doing it wrong. Put it downwards here, so you have like this nice big surface that it won't slip off. Cut the two ends off. Make sure it's washed, of course, if you're going to be eating it. I'll just toss these off to the side. And then all you have to do is position your hand so that your knuckle is against the knife and your fingers are in. So if you look right here, you'll notice that my knuckle is touching the knife and my fingernail is not in the way. So as you cut, you actually just move that back, and you can control using your thumb and your other fingers the thickness. Now, I'm not even watching right now, so I'm just cutting purely based on what my fingers are feeling out. Now I know this isn't a great cut and I'm not doing a great job, but as an odd angle, so you'll have to take my word for it. And you always want to be holding your knife like that, except for a very few special situations. Now right now I'm doing the absolute best chopping method, which is to slide your knife along, but for a lot of vegetables you can actually cheat and chop. But make sure you keep your knife on your knuckle and you never slice above it. So all you want to do is raise it to the knuckle point and just keep chopping. Always slow down near the end and get your last couple chops in. Super easy. Let me just wipe that off the board and move on to the next thing. So carrots are a bit more difficult. I do not like anything that is round. Round means injury. Now, a lot of places will ask that you chop a carrot in a way that you get nice big round pieces. And that is good. I do like nice big round pieces, but for a beginner, it's dangerous. Look at how much this is rolling around. I don't like doing it. So what I do personally is I chop it in half. And by the way, this is also how you get carrot sticks. And then you hold very carefully on both sides. Let's try to get a good shot of that. Hold very carefully on both sides and dig your knife in at one end. And make sure you have it all the way to the other end and just chop down in half. Now you have a flat surface. A flat surface can help you do exactly what I was doing before. Remember, choke up on the knife, hold it, control the blade. If you don't control the blade, you're just flopping around and it's useless. So always choke up. I personally hold the blade. You probably don't really need to do that. Some people, I don't know. So one more time, like this. I'm actually watching my monitor right now, which is a dangerous thing to do. Always be washing your hands. And nicely cut carrots. Very easy to adjust the size of the carrot because you're always moving at a steady pace while you're cutting. So the carrot will always come out the same size. You move faster for bigger cuts, slower for smaller cuts. And you can even do like paper thin. I'm not very good at this. Said I'm pretty mediocre at best. But you can do paper thin cuts fairly consistently. If you look at that, they're almost the same size, and it's using that method. If you use any other method of cutting, I'm afraid you're actually just doing it wrong. Seriously, that is the method for most vegetables. There are certain things you do differently if you're cutting like a lime or an onion, but we'll cover those, well, right away. So let's move on to an onion. This is probably the most essential thing you will ever learn to cut, because it's used in almost every recipe. Now this is a pretty bad looking onion, but that's why I'm cutting it, and this stuff is all going to waste. So make sure for the first slice that your knuckles are in their regular position, your thumb is in the back so it doesn't get sliced off, and then just slide and push forward and through. Knives work best in two directions at the same time. You never go straight down, you always go forward and down, or back and down. Specifically for meat, you often pull back. So now that you've cut the onion in half, you need to get rid of the paper. Now I've worked in a restaurant, and I'm afraid restaurants tend to be a bit wasteful. Some people I know actually leave this end intact to keep the onion together. I personally don't, because I like to peel an onion very quickly, and for me, that involves taking off the entire first layer of skin. So you just pull that off, and then you have an instantly peeled onion. Now, I'm going to teach you how to dice, mostly because I don't like onions. I love the taste of cooked onions, I love them in my food. I don't like the texture, I don't like big chunks of them. So, what I do is I actually start out by making a very risky cut, holding the top of the onion that goes along the bottom. Now make sure your fingers are out of the way. This is a bad thing to show you. So make sure your fingers are out of the way and cut almost to the very back, and do that 2 or 3 times, depending on how fine you want these onions. I want them really fine, so I'll do 3 times. Next, you slice almost to the very back, very, very thin lines. Now you're not actually dicing the onion yet, you're just getting kind of the foundation for a diced onion going. As you can see, I have this lovely grid pattern. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. But now all I have to do to cut the onion is use the exact same method I showed you for the carrots. It's a bit more risky because you're using more of your knuckles. But as long as you stick to the method, you should not cut yourself. Now the hard part comes near the end. Just make sure your fingers are out of the way. And then I end up with this. Personally, I just do whatever with it. That was horrible knife skills there. And you know, if you chop it enough in enough directions, it'll just be a thing. Take the spare bits, leave it. You can see this is fairly well minced onion. Explain to the camera. If you cook it and caramelize it, it will barely show up in your food, and if you cut them enough, you won't even cry anymore once you've cut them. So let's get all of that off the cutting board. By the way, when I'm doing this with my knife, I am being careful with my knife. I'm not actually scraping the blade across the board. Never do that. I'm just scraping the side of the blade to clear off the board. So I'm going to get my onion knife wiped off here. I also recommend keeping a cloth around if you're going to be switching foods, just to kind of wipe the knife off, make sure there's nothing stuck to it, make sure there's no flavor stuck to it, although that is barely avoidable. Next thing is limes. I actually have 2 limes here because there's 2 things I want to show you. One is, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's kind of the cut they do in bars often to give you a lime wedge. For this, you just cut off both ends, and you do this just so you have a nice surface to cut on. So now the lime just rests, it won't be rolling around anywhere. And then you hold both sides and cut down, and then cut down one more time, and you end up with nice little wedges of lime. They're not pointy, but, you know, at least they're cut. The next thing I want to show you is more of a cooking trick than a cutting trick. And this is pre-juicing your limes. Now I'm going to get a small custard bowl for this to show it off. So most people will just cut their limes and then squeeze them into whatever they want it to be in. I personally smash the lime and then roll it. Now, I can't actually show you the lime because of the bad camera angle, but I roll it a few times. And this will actually juice the lime inside of its skin. So now it's all nice and soft and squishy. I can feel that already. And then when I cut into it, holding both sides and moving both down and forward at the same time, remember, knives work best in two directions, the lime becomes really easy to squeeze almost all the juice out of. You barely have to put any effort in. Anyways, this is my first knife skills video. I'll probably be doing several of these. If I've done anything wrong, please leave it in the comments, and I will annotate. Personally, I think my knife skills are decent, but hell, I was barely ever supervised. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope it wasn't too dry for you. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.